The actor for Isabella Torrisi from Mafia The Old Country has confirmed that 2K has greenlit the next Mafia game. Everyone seems to be up in arms about this, really excited, and whilst it's good news, am I the only one who's not surprised? Like, of course they did. Mafia The Old Country performed really well. Even if it had somewhat mixed reviews, it was a very popular game. So of course they're going to continue the franchise. So while everyone's up in arms about this, personally, I'm a little indifferent. I mean, it's good news, don't get me wrong, and maybe I'm being a bit of a downer here, but I just don't think it's that significant of an update. I'm glad that a new Mafia game is entering the early stages and will one day be on the way, but that's kind of what I expected. Before we continue, if you want to keep up to date on the latest Mafia news, then you should subscribe to my channel and join my Discord. My channel will always cover the latest gaming news that I am interested in, and my Discord is a great place to hang out and talk about games. Still though, it is good news, and it's making me wonder what is the next Mafia game going to be. If I had to guess, I think that the next Mafia game is going to be Mafia 4. I know, shocking, right? What Mafia 4 actually will be though is completely unknown at this point. Will it be a continuation of Link and Clay's story? Probably not, because it wasn't received very well. I always thought it'd be pretty cool if they followed Donovan's story. I thought where that left off in Mafia 3 was really interesting, about how Donovan would go around and hunt down all those senator people. I forgot the names. That being said, whilst that sounds cool, it doesn't really sound like a Mafia game. That'd actually be a perfect game for a spin-off. But yeah, I don't think that's going to be Mafia 4 either, even though I think it'd be really cool. I think they'll want to invest in the open world a lot more like they did in Mafia 3. I don't think they're going to just throw away all that progress, and I don't think The Old Country was supposed to overtake that game in any capacity. I think The Old Country was supposed to be a smaller scope spin-off whilst they work on the bigger game. So I'm going to assume that we're going to be getting a much larger open world with the next Mafia game. At least that's what I'd hope, and I know some people won't be happy to hear that, but I am. Personally, it doesn't have to be the next GTA, but I do think that Mafia The Old Country showed the limitations of having such a linear story at times. Because it's a game where, once the story is done, you just go play something else. I haven't touched the game since I beat the story, and I won't touch the game until I want to beat the story again. It's a shame, but it's the reality of the situation, and I don't think every Mafia game should be like that. Not that that's a problem, but I think that if you're going to make the next big sequel in the game, it can't be lesser in scope than the previous game, even if the previous game was somewhat poorly received. Especially when the spin-off game that was lesser in scope, where they tested that, wasn't the best received Mafia anyway. Not that it was badly received, but I don't think it was received particularly well. So I think they're going to go back to a more traditional open world game, which I think will be cool. I'm expecting a big arsenal of weapons, hopefully a ton of side activity, hopefully a longer and less predictable story. And personally, I want to see an all-new cast of characters like they did with The Old Country. Of course, there's a couple tie-ins to the previous games, and I'm completely fine with that. But outside of a few Easter eggs and a few nods and winks to the game's history, I want a completely new cast. I think The Old Country did this really well, and I loved it. When I saw Vito come back in Mafia 3, whilst a lot of people were really happy, I wasn't one of them. As cool as I think it is to have Vito back, I was a little bit like, damn, are we really not going to let go of the past that hard? And then obviously in Mafia 2, they had the callback to Mafia 1. However, I do think that was a lot better executed and a lot cooler, as it was more just, again, of a nod and a wink. So whilst I don't mind sort of nods to previous games, I definitely want an all-new cast of characters, which I do think we will get. The next question is, like, time period. Where is it going to be set? Of course, a lot of people may want it to be set more futuristic, more like Mafia 3, because I don't think Mafia 3 is a bad game. I think it's a weird Mafia title, but not a bad game. So I do expect some people to be like, we want a more modern-feeling Mafia. Hell, I'll probably get shot for saying this, but I think a modern-day Mafia game could be really cool. Not saying they should do it, but a sort of crime family modern-day business empire game. That could actually really work in my eyes. I'm not saying they should do this. This is why I am the fan, and they are the game creators. They know what the fans want. This is just a cool idea to me. I think personally, I'd actually love a time period a lot more like The Old Country. I think the time period was actually the strongest part of that game. The setting was great too, so those two just really combined made the game worth it. If it wasn't for this really strong, striking time period, and of course the beautiful location of Sicily, I don't think I'd have been half as invested in the game. But I'd also be okay with a time period more Mafia 1 and 2 style. I think those work too. To be honest, the time period's not one that matters to me personally. I don't want it to be obviously futuristic, but it's never going to be that. I certainly hope not. So as long as it's set somewhat in the past, I'd say maybe 1980s and down, I personally would be happy, but I know a lot of people would love an earlier time period than even that. So, with a new Mafia greenlit, are we going to be seeing anything from the game soon? No. This is very early stages. We will hear nothing about Mafia for the foreseeable future. They haven't even finished the post-launch content for The Old Country, as they've confirmed some updates are coming to the game to add new features and modes. So let's not get ahead of ourselves. The Old Country is the game we should be looking towards right now, even if at the moment it's been very quiet, because there is going to be more coming to the game. I don't think there's going to be a ton more, but I think we'll still see a little for the game come in terms of content. But it's an optimistic looking future for Mafia 4, and I'm very excited for it. So, I hope we hear something from them at some point in the future. I hope it's cool. I hope they learn a lot from the Old Country, and I hope they also learn a lot from their own past and see what people liked and disliked. I hope they don't just throw everything out the window because they're too scared to make an open world game and just go back to these linear open world segment stories. It's not that they're bad. I love the Old Country. I might even consider it my favorite Mafia game on a good day. But I don't think that all scope and ambition should be thrown out the window due to a failed attempt with Mafia 3. So I hope that they can pick themselves up. They've had a successful game launch with the Old Country, and whilst it's not been the best received Mafia, it's not been a poorly received one. Most people generally like it, it's just a little unambitious. So I hope they learn from that, they learn from prior games, and make the next best Mafia experience for us all to enjoy. Either way, pretty exciting news, and whilst it's not the biggest news in the world, it's nice to hear that Mafia is still going strong.